There is a scary story that has been told since ancient times in Japan. I myself heard that story from a friend when I was a child. It's story like this. A young man and woman had a child. They gave birth to the baby, but they couldn't raise it. The two went to a lake in the middle of the night and got on a boat to the center of the lake, and the woman dropped the baby into the lake while saying, "I'm sorry, I'm sorry." A few years later, the couple was able to afford it and got married. They had a daughter and lived happily. One day, the girl told her parents that she wanted to go on the lake. The parents were reluctant, but the child insisted, so the three of them went to the lake. When they arrived at the lake, the girl said that she wanted to get on the boat. The parents didn't want to get on the boat. However, the girl insisted on getting on the boat, so they had no choice but to get on the boat. When the boat reached the center of the lake, the girl said that she wanted to pee. After making sure that no one was around, the mother picked her up to let her pee. Then the girl turned around and said,
"Don't drop me this time, please."
Did you know about this story? And recently, on March 11, 14 years after the Tohoku Pacific Ocean earthquake, a post was made on a Japanese threads that became a hot topic, so I would like to introduce it to you. My 2-year-old daughter, who saw the tsunami footage broadcast on the media during the 3.11 memorial service, suddenly cried out, "Nachin, I was here. I fell into the water with a bang. Nachin, I died. I was in the sky, rolling around, and then I jumped in mommy." I'd heard that she rolled around from the sky and then jumped in mommy a few times, and I was skeptical, wondering if it was before she was born. But this was the first time I'd heard of something before that. It was probably the first time she had ever seen a video of the tsunami when she is 2 years old. Maybe I'm raising a reincarnation of a great soul. If reincarnation really exists, I'm raising a life that someone once treasured. I can't confirm the truth of this, but I've once again decided to cherish my family. This mysterious post about a child talking about memories from before he was born has generated a huge response, with many people replying with stories about their past lives. I will introduce them below. My child is the same. She is now 2 years and 10 months old, but I was wondering whether to post this yesterday and gave up, so I'm surprised. She has hardly even been to the ocean, but when she watched the video of last year's 3/11, she cried out, "I'm scared of the waves. I'm scared of the water. I'm scared of the ocean. It hurts." I've never taught her the word wave, or even spoken to her, but she suddenly started screaming and crying. I thought to myself, was she reborn? This year, she was watching the same video, and she cried out, "The waves are coming. I can't run. Help me." It was painful, wasn't it? "It's okay now." I tapped her shoulder, and she muttered, "I want to do yoga with my friends again. I want to see my okasan." I've never said or done yoga, and she call me Mom, so I've never made her say the word okasan. That's wonderful. When my childhood friend's daughter was about 4 years old, she would say things like, "Everyone I loved left me. I had a little brother that I loved very much, but he got sick and died. I couldn't help him. I cried a lot, but I was so sad, and I've been alone ever since." For some reason, she only talks about it at kindergarten, and according to her mother, she gets anxious even when she goes to the bathroom, and follows her all the way. When I and my childhood friend, who is also her mother, gently told her about it, saying, "It's okay," she hid her face in her hands, crouched on the ground, and seemed to be completely stiff. She seemed so scared that she suffered until we stopped talking about it. The regret and emptiness of losing a loved one and not being able to save them. At the age of 4, she already understood what the pain of separation is. There are some unbelievable stories, aren't there? But I feel that all life comes to us to find goals, purposes, and something. I often think that children are close to God because they can teach us something important just by their existence. My daughter, who will be 6 next month, said that when she was 2, her previous mommy and daddy didn't love her. All she wanted was lots of hugs, but they were always angry, and then her daddy ran out of the house and got hit by a car, and her mommy died in a fire, and then God told her it was enough in the hot fire and she went back to the sky. She wanted to be loved. She would talk about this every day, crying. By the way, She don't call them mommy and daddy in her house. She is the third of 4 siblings, but she is the only one who clings to my arm when she goes to sleep. She is an incredibly cute child. My niece was exactly like that. After watching the video, she suddenly said, XX-chan was a baby, so I couldn't run away. I was wearing a bear costume and a striped costume. I couldn't run away. My sister was surprised by the suddenness of it, so when I asked her again, she didn't say anything after that. She was 2 or 3 years old. I heard that people who are caught up in natural disasters are reborn quickly, but I didn't expect that. It was only about 3 years since the earthquake at that time. My 11-year-old son was watching a video of the Great East Japan earthquake when he was 3 years old and suddenly said, "I was working on construction here." It was 3:33. I was 33 years old. He was obsessed with the number 3 at the time, so I think he just said it by chance, but when I think about the time it took for the tsunami to reach him, it's not surprising that he could have died at 3:33. I now have a 4-year-old son, and he tells me that when he was little, I was in a bicycle accident and died. So I keep telling him to be careful of cars. I didn't experience the earthquake, but I remember it was probably an air raid, and that memory always came back to me in the mornings, even when I was in elementary school. The sound of people screaming, "Mommy! Mommy!" and the sound of something burning nearby. For some reason, I understood that this was an air raid. Whenever the morning sun hit the orange curtains, my body would freeze and I would hear a rumbling sound in the back of my head and hear the voice from earlier. It brings tears to my eyes. So that really happens. After reading everyone's comments, I'm convinced that we all have past lives and that our souls are connected when we are reborn. When my child was about 2 years old and just starting to talk, I was scolding him and he said, "You know, I was really looking forward to being born. Be nicer to me." I was shocked. When I asked him what he was doing before he was born, he said he was swimming alone. It all seems to make sense. When I happened to come across a night walking training session by the self-defense forces, I felt so scared that I prepared to die, and tears started to flow. At that moment, I heard from within me, "It's okay, this is Japan, and the war is over, so it's okay." It felt like there was another person inside me who was telling me. I had been wondering about it for a while, but now I'm sure. I am the reincarnation of my aunt who died during the war. There are other episodes that I can think of that made me sure, but that was the most important incident. I myself was seen by someone who claims to be able to understand past lives, and they told me that I was a man born in Northern Europe, and the reincarnation of someone who died in the war. On a different day, someone else told me the same thing. I'm a woman born in Japan, so I don't think there are any similarities, but apparently when I was little, I was scared of war and would often cry when bombs fell, even though no one taught me about the war or showed me any footage of it. Maybe reincarnation really does exist. My 10-year-old nephew suddenly asked me about the Great East Japan earthquake about 2 years ago. It was a sudden, out-of-nowhere question, and everyone around him was shocked. I asked him, "Yeah, I know about it. What did it mean?" And he replied, "I was watching it from the sky. It was shaking so much that I was scared, so I clung to God." I couldn't hear the end very well, but I think he said, "God." When I asked him, "Even so, why did you come to Earth?" He replied, "Because I wanted to make everyone smile." The adults around him were speechless. I remembered this when I saw your post, so I decided to write about it. The connection of life is a mysterious thing. For about 2 years, since my daughter was 2 years old, I have been telling her about her past life. I didn't know much about what she talked about, but when I researched the social conditions, tools and vehicles of the time, etc., it was perfect. It was pre-war and post-war Japan. She suddenly started talking after watching a war video in the Showa-era section of the History Museum. She also told me that she was hit by a car and died after the war. She said it was funny to see her family clinging to her corpse and crying. And she told me that since I was born, she was watching from the sky and saying, "That's my mother." Perhaps many of those who died on 3/11 have been reborn like my daughter. Nurturing someone's precious life. It was so wonderful that I cried. When my eldest son was still little, although he's now 6, I was waiting in the car at a railroad crossing when he suddenly told me the story that he had been hit by a train and died at the age of 1. I don't know if it's true, but it meant that he had died when my mother died, so I remember thinking that I wanted to cherish him more than ever before because he is alive now. This is a little different, but when I was watching the news about 3/11ths on TV as a family, we started talking about where we were and what we were doing at the time. My son, who is now 5 years old, pointed toward the ceiling and said, "I was watching this from above." It was so sudden that my husband and I looked at each other and couldn't ask any more questions, but I guess that kind of thing can happen. I'm glad I was able to go to a wonderful mom. My 6-year-old son doesn't have that problem, but my 8-year-old daughter is really scared of tsunamis and earthquakes. She starts crying even at the slightest tremor. When she saw the tsunami on the news about the Great East Japan earthquake, she cried in her sleep for a few days. She gets scared, so I haven't asked her about it, but I wonder if it might be the same for my child. I guess she was reincarnated. I'm glad she was reborn under the Lord who made her think that she should be cherished. Seeing this post reminded me of an episode from my mother. I have an older brother who was never born, and my mother said that after more than 20 years, she met a child who she thought was his reincarnation. I wasn't there, but a boy about 5 years old came straight to my mother, slipping through the crowd of people there, and hugged her. My mother immediately understood why and asked, "Were you coming here, too?" She said they met at a tourist spot, and the boy replied, "Yes," and they hugged each other for a while, and the boy smiled, waved, and walked off to another place. My sister, who saw the whole thing, said she was surprised and didn't know what was going on. I'm sorry for the long post, but maybe something like that could happen. Nice to meet you. Actually, my daughter was like that when she was 2 years old. She told me, I got swept away and called out, "Mommy." Mommy didn't come. It was snowing. And even though she likes baths, when we played in the bathtub and filled it half with water and put a toy floating in it, she cried so hard she couldn't stand, saying, "No, no, no." I think she must have had a similar experience in a past life. Now my daughter is 10 and doesn't remember anything. I'm good enough at swimming that I can win competitions, but ever since I was little I've been afraid of the ocean. I was always told that a pool and the ocean are different, but it wasn't that kind of fear, it was more a fear that my whole body rejected me. But I live in a landlocked prefecture, so I didn't really think about it. But is there anyone who can visualize images of their past life? I met a spiritual person and had the opportunity to have them look at my past life, and I had the experience of seeing scenes I'd never seen before in my head as images rather than photographs, and even feeling and smelling things. I was swept away by the waves, not knowing up from down, in pitch black. It was painful, cold and difficult, and I was gripping something so tightly that I was surprised at how strong my body was. The thing I was holding on to so tightly as I was being swept away was a little girl. At that time, I suddenly remembered that my grandmother's personality had changed before she passed away, and she had begun to speak English fluently although I didn't know she could speak it, and my aunt had said that she might have mentioned the name of a place or a name. I contacted her a while later, listened to what my grandmother had said, and when I investigated, I found a town that looked just like the one I had seen in the video, and when I looked into it, I was convinced that it was a place that had been hit by the tsunami. I believe that I died in a tsunami in a previous life and was reborn. And before she passed away, my grandmother's personality was that of a 4.5-year-old girl. I think that maybe in my past life, I was the parent and my grandmother was the daughter. At first, I got goosebumps, but I felt so happy to have met my grandmother in this life too. When my niece was just about 2 years old, the moment a video of the atomic bomb dome was shown, she muttered, "It's hot here. I'm scared here." In fact, she was a child who was very afraid of fire, so at that moment I thought, maybe she was living in this era. I believe in reincarnation. I'm glad your daughter was reborn into a wonderful family. I have a vivid memory from my childhood of being at the dinner table with my family in the morning, when suddenly, I had the image of something heavy, like a black tire, falling from the sky although I can't put it into words. In an instant, the house collapsed and my body got stuck between it and the ceiling. I remember crying and screaming in pain and sadness. I had this nightmare many times during my childhood, and it was so painful and sad. I remember jumping out of bed, unable to tell if it was real or not. In my childhood, I remembered the faces of my father, mother, grandparents, and siblings sitting at the dinner table in my dreams, but by the time I became aware of things, I had forgotten them. It's just speculation, but now that I'm 43, I sometimes think that I was a child who died during the war. That's why I believe there is a past life. I hope you find plenty of happiness to make up for your past life. When my child was 2 years old, on a trip to Atami, the moment he came down the stairs and saw the sea, he suddenly shouted, "It's a tsunami. Run!" and cried, pointing towards the mountain. He was scared when he saw the sea. He said he would sink, even though he had never drowned. During the first evacuation drill at the nursery school, he urged everyone to run under the desks before the teacher even told them. Even the teacher was often surprised. My child, who could go into the river, the pool, and the bath but stubbornly refused to go into the sea, must have been reborn. I think so. Excuse me, I'm just passing by. When my youngest child was about 18 months old, he was the first to speak among my children, and when the video of 3.11 was shown, he hugged me in fear, saying, "Tsunami is scary, it hurts, it's black and big and it hurts, it's big, it's scary, tsunami I don't want to." I quickly turned off the TV. I was surprised that he understood what a tsunami was. After that, he started elementary school, and we went to the Tsunami Memorial Museum as a family. At that time, my son said that he didn't remember being afraid of tsunamis, but he couldn't go inside the museum. "It's scary, I don't want to see, I'm waiting." I thought that he was scared when he didn't know what it was like inside. I think of the coast and leave hot tea there. I can't forget the strange changes in my body that day. I try to cherish the present. What an amazing experience. My 2-year-old daughter has recently started calling herself by a name that is not her own. Everyone in the family has been thinking that she hasn't remembered her name yet, so we've been telling her and getting her to repeat it over and over again, but she still calls herself by a different name. I've been wondering why, but after reading this, I'm thinking that maybe she has memories of a past life and that's why she uses that name. It may not be the case, but I'm happy with it. Sorry for the off-topic comment. When I was little, for some reason I called myself E-chan, a nickname that's completely different from my given name. There's no E in my first or last name. I don't think my parents ever said anything about it, but even now that I'm in my 50s, I still wonder why I called E-chan. I'm thinking now that maybe I was called that in a past life. When my child could only say "Mama" and "Anpan," he saw the tsunami sign, and he said, "Tsunami. Tsunami. Run." So my husband and I were wondering if this child was a past life member who died in eastern Japan. I believe in reincarnation. I had my wedding about a year and a half before my daughter was born. But my daughter watched ours wedding. But she cried because she couldn't meet us. She would often talk to me crying. When I asked her where she was watching from, she said she was sitting in the very back seat. That was the seat of my father, who passed away when I was young, and my daughter's grandfather. He had already passed away at the time of the wedding, but we had made a seat for him and hung a photo of him there. Then, crying, she said, "Thank you, Mommy, for being born." I never expected my daughter to say that. It really warmed my heart. My daughter is like the reincarnation of a victim of the atomic bomb. I think she was around 3 years old at the time, but she has memories from before she was born. She said, "We were all wearing hoods on our way to school, and black rain started falling. I was really surprised because I've never shown her any war footage." My daughter is already 8 years old, so she doesn't seem to remember her past life, so please take her to Tohoku while she still remembers. Yesterday, I saw a post from someone else about a daughter who said, "I was watching Mommy from the sky, and I had a conversation with her." She previously said that Princess Aiko had told Empress Misako, "I was watching Mommy from the sky," and I thought, what does that mean? I wonder if it's called reincarnation. I'm glad that her soul has now been born into your daughter and is growing up happily. That's an amazing story. I'm amazed. According to people who study reincarnation, people are reborn every 2 or 3 years on average, and many of those who have memories of their past lives are those who died gruesomely in their previous lives. Memories are reset at the time of reincarnation, but there is also a hypothesis that strong thoughts do not leave the soul and people are reborn with their memories intact. There is also a true story that a few years after the Vietnam War, many children born in the country claimed to be Japanese. When my eldest daughter was 3 years old, she told me, "My previous mommy never came home," so I cried with my baby brother. We were hungry and the room was pitch black. There were lots of bugs. I called out, "Mommy, Mommy, help me," but it was no use. I was lonely when my brother died, so in heaven, my brother and I chose Mommy and Dad and came here. Now we're having so much fun. The little brother she was talking about was my second sister, and I hugged her tightly and cried, saying that the two of them had been reborn into us. Now my eldest daughter is 11 years old and apparently has no memory of her past life. There's no need to remember. I'm glad she's forgotten. Now the 4 siblings are happy and lively. Although it is not related to the earthquake, my son, who is in elementary school, suddenly started talking in detail about his past life. He said he started remembering when he was about 2 years old, when he was able to say various words. He said that it was fine if you thought it was a dream. Incidentally, he said that in his past life he was a cat, kept by a kind man who loved Japanese sweets. The souls of children who died in disasters are reborn quickly. The children who are reborn are divided into 2 groups, and they go to the places of their dreams. Next life, they protect their mothers. Next life, they help their mothers, and some choose to live in areas where flooding is likely to occur. There are also children who choose mothers who live near the sea or rivers, or in areas where flooding is unlikely to occur. I am 46 years old. Since I was a child, I remember seeing huge tsunamis occur on the Pacific side of the Earth, not in Japan, from the atmosphere above the Earth. I also remember living as an American male soldier, probably, and running away, and being shot in battlefields with tall reeds like Vietnam, Cambodia. I heard that children can remember their past lives up until the age of 5, so I asked my child about it many times. But when he was 2, he asked me back, "Are you okay in the head?" He definitely had that kind of personality in his past life. How did you think? After reading this series of posts, I have a question: does reincarnation really exist? In Buddhism, the teaching of reincarnation is deeply rooted in the doctrine, so I think Japanese people naturally tend to believe in past lives. When Japanese people see a smart child, they sometimes ask, "How many times have you lived?" Of course, children sometimes talk about fantasy without any ill intent, so not all of them are memories from a past life. However, when collecting stories of past life memories, it seems that people who died tragically or died with strong feelings tend to be reborn with their memories intact. And such people seem to be reborn relatively quickly. And the common explanation for reincarnation seems to be that we are born by choosing a mother from the sky. The period of reincarnation varies from person to person, and it seems that it can take more than 100 years. If there is a rule for reincarnation, I personally think that it is a period during which the heavens look down on the present world and decide the timing and person of reincarnation. And I think that people who have something unfinished in this life cannot stay still and reincarnate quickly. And once it's resolved, the memories of the past life naturally fade and are forgotten. Is that the truth? Or are they temporarily possessed by a strong-willed ghost? We don't know it. A number of strange stories that have started since 3/11. It's up to you to believe it or not.